Good evening, everybody. I hope we're staying warm wherever we are. I'm sure some of you are in warmer climates than Geneva, New York today. But we are just going to get started. We have a few more people joining the waiting room, but we are recording tonight so that we can send out any FAQs along with this recording after the fact. My name is Stephen Simons, Director of Admissions here at HWS. If you had the pleasure of being on our first Fafsa call back in December, you've seen and heard from me before. But this is largely going to be Lisa Hosky's show tonight, our Director of Financial Aid. But first, we both just wanted to congratulate all the parents and the students who are in the room for getting to this point. We are really thrilled to welcome you to our community. And I know not all of you have committed to HWS. We're obviously waiting on some financial aid uncertainty, but at the very least wanted to congratulate you. So before I turn it over to Lisa, I'm going to talk a little bit about the acceptance letters. I got some information in there for you. And then we'll get into the nitty-gritty. So Lisa, if you want to go to the next slide. First thing I wanted to say is if you have not yet received or viewed your admissions decision in your portal, if you are an early decision student, if you're an early action student, you should have that, and you should have access to your portal. If not, check your email. There is an email, your student's email, whoever applied in all likelihood, that says you've received your admissions decision and you can view it. If you don't know how to log in, look a little deeper in your email. There's also some instructions about logging in. And if that still doesn't work, feel free to contact us. It's important that you access your portal because there is going to be not just your admissions information, but that's where we'll upload financial aid information when we have official financial aid awards. And there may be some other important updates as we go through the process. Included in your admissions letter, some of you will see merit scholarships if you've received a merit scholarship. Some of you might have seen 2 merit scholarships in there. So while tonight we're going to talk a lot about the need-based aid, I'd be remiss not to point out that you may have also received merit scholarships. And just a couple things about those scholarships. They're guaranteed for all 4 years as long as you are enrolled full-time as a student at HWS. And what you see in those letters is what you can expect all 4 years, independent of any need-based aid. Also, just wanted to let you know that we do have an admitted student event coming on February 10th, along with some others in the spring. So if you want to see Lisa or I in person, that is a great place to do it. And we can certainly answer any more questions that you have. And feel free to come visit in person as well. After this call's over, my contact information is online. You can call it the financial aid office is online. And then of course you should all have access or know either through email communications from HWS who your admission counselor is. You can find them online too, or you may already have their information. So you can reach out to them as well. So that's all I've got to say. And then I'll turn it over to like I said, the star of the show tonight, Lisa, to talk about why you're all here.
Can you hear me okay? Everything's good? Okay.
Yep. Oh, one thing I want to say, sorry, Lisa, I forgot to mention. I've disabled the chat, but the Q&A is live. So if you have questions, you can drop it in the Q&A. I'll see it, and then we'll either respond verbally or we'll respond in the chat. Sorry, Lisa. Now it's your show.
I'm really happy to be here tonight. I'm very excited to offer you this time and say congratulations again. We're truly excited about the folks that we're seeing join our class. One of the first things I want to make sure you know, as you can see on the screen, your admissions offer is not the end of the story. Our scholarships, our merit scholarships are excellent, and Stephen already talked about how they are consistent for the 4 years, as long as your student is enrolled for full time. One of the things that we would like to do is actually evaluate your situation for need-based aid. And to do that, we would need you to complete the 24-25 FAFSA. And we'll look at everything that you may qualify for when you do that. Not only our need-based funding, but anything that you might be eligible for from the federal government, including any loans and work study that we could offer you. The website is open. There were some challenges at the beginning when it first started on, I think it was December 31st. But I think now it's pretty consistently open. However, even though you can file your FAFSA right now, the date that we are actually going to receive your information is a bit unclear. Just a couple days ago, the Department of Education shared with us that they need to make some adjustments. And we don't have a clear date on when the Department of Education will send that to us. However, there are still some things that you can do. If you have not yet done it, we talked about this in the last Zoom meeting. I strongly encourage you to make sure both you and your student have your FAFSA ID. The parent and the students will each need their own, and it'll have to be a specific email to the parent or student. You can't use the same email. They won't accept that. The student has to begin the process with the FAFSA with this new 2425 option. And they will need a parent's social security number and date of birth to enter in, so they can invite you to be a contributor. And when they talk about being a contributor, what that means is not monetary, it's providing the information needed for your child to be considered for financial aid. So once you get that, then there'll be some questions which you'll answer, and there'll be an option, really the only option, unless you're ineligible, to transfer your data from the IRS, so you won't have to enter it all yourself. But you absolutely, if you haven't, please go create your FSA ID and keep it in a safe place, whether you have a folder or you keep it on wherever you keep all your passwords, because you'll be doing the FAFSA every year and you'll want to use that same login information. The parent must complete their section of the FAFSA. If you have not created your FSA ID, by the time that your student invites you to participate in that, you may want to wait a day or two, simply because we've heard a little scuttlebutt that if you do it too quickly, right after your student invites you, if you're still setting up your FSA ID, you run into an obstacle. The system seems to create some challenges there. So if your child does it, wait a day, wait to, it runs through a Social Security verification process, and then go in and do your part. When the FAFSA is done, when you've completed everything, an email will be sent to the student saying it's done, this is the information that we see, and then you just end up waiting. So I'm going to wait just 1 second. Are we okay so far? Any big burning questions?
I'm answering some in the chat, Lisa, but I think keep going, and if something's pressing, I'll let you know.
Sounds good. I know it's a lot of information that we're trying to get through, and I might be going a little quickly because I want to make sure you have enough time to ask questions at the end as well. So to try to get ready for this, for some context, I've been working in financial aid, we'll just say for more than 20 years. And I actually started as a work study student in the financial aid office. So I've been around a while, and I've experienced it as a student, as a parent, as an administrator. But given all the changes that have happened with the FAFSA this year, I wanted to see how it was. So I filed one for myself. It took me less than an hour. And I don't think that was due to my expertise per se. I actually thought it was easier than what I've seen in the past. I would say have a copy of your 2022 taxes nearby. I didn't need mine. It actually went pretty smoothly for me when I did it. If parents filed jointly, this is just something to make it easier. If you filed your taxes jointly, only one parent will need to be a contributor. You'll just need the other parent's information, Social Security and date of birth, to move forward. And then you really just follow the prompts. Okay. And I thought it might be helpful just to let you all see what it looks like. So this is the first page when you go in to studentaid.gov. You can see that up here. You go into this place right here that I have highlighted that says the FAFSA form. This is what the login page will look like. You can see at the bottom. Now, if you've had a username in the past for another child who went to school or you went yourself, you can find it through the forgot my username, forgot my password. Or if you don't have an account, you can create an account. So I wanted to make sure that you could see where that was. And as you go through, I skipped a lot of steps, obviously, going through the screens, but at the end, for any of you who are New York State residents, at the end of the process, you'll see an option to start your application for the New York State-based aid. And I strongly encourage you to do that. It'll save you a few steps a little bit later. And this is what it looks like when you finish it, when the student finishes it. This is congratulations, the form is completed. It tells you the date. Stuff you see crossed off is the data release number, where if you needed to do something on the phone, and then your estimated student aid index. The student aid index is really just a number that helps me figure out what aid you're eligible to receive. It's nothing else. It's just a value that we look at. You will see this language later down on the page. Where it says check your email, you'll receive an email version of this confirmation page. And tracking the status of your form. And one of the things I want to point out in this highlighted section that I highlighted, look for an email at the end of January to learn when your FAFSA information has been sent to your selected schools. You can select up to 20. Of course, we're hoping you're focused totally on HWS, but you can select more. When I am not confident, I'm just being very honest with y'all, I'm not confident that we're going to have that FAFSA information by the end of January. So if you get any interesting communications from the Department of Ed, please feel free to share them. Only because I know just a day or two ago, it was that they said they were going to make some adjustments, which will benefit all of you, but it might take them a little bit longer. And it explains what the SAI or Student Aid Index is down here. And it basically just helps us determine what aid you're eligible to receive. So you select the schools that get your information, and then I take that and I put together a package around your merit scholarship. So I use that to evaluate for our need-based funding, as well as whether or not I can get you grants from the federal government and perhaps the state, depending on the state that you're from. And then I usually add in the offers of loans and work study for you to consider. It's likely you'll receive the information before we do. We're really hoping that we'll have it in February. Not really hoping. My staff and I will work as quickly as we possibly can to get you the information that you need. We're going to have a lot to get out in a very short time. And we would invite you to reach out to us if you have any questions. In my experience in financial aid, and what got me into it in the first place, is I don't think it's necessarily always the money or the awards or the numbers that get people really concerned or confused. A lot of times there's just a lot of emotion around financial aid and the offers that are given, and we can help you navigate all of that. And we're happy to do that. And I know that was really quick, but like I said, I wanted to make sure that if there were anything else that came up, Stephen could ask the questions. Hopefully that's really helpful for all of you. It's really important that you remember that the admission letter is not the last of it. We will get back to you with more information, and we will help you through the process regardless of how late it ends up being in the cycle.
All right, Lisa, got some questions in the chat. I can read them and then if you want to answer them. I'm just going to go through in kind of the order that they came in. So how will we know that a certain college has received our FAFSA application?
I think when the Department of Education sends out that email saying that we send it to your school, it should list that up. I mean, basically, as long as you put the school code in when you pick the schools that you're going to add, they will all get it. And the Department of Education will confirm that in an email when they send it out.
Okay. Another individual says, I'm not sure that the IRS link works with the 24-25 version. Do you know if it's working?
It worked for me. And the biggest change is, if you've done a FAFSA in the past, it used to be called the IRS data retrieval. It is not that anymore. It's actually called the data exchange now. It's a little bit more robust, the interface. And it's actually not optional. Like, it's not a situation where you can enter in your information by yourself anymore. The only time that that really comes up as an option for you to enter it in yourself is if your filing status doesn't allow you to apply for whatever reason, or there's something really unique about your circumstances. And when you're going through the FAFSA, it'll tell you that if you're in that situation.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This one is something I think we've all you've experienced working in financial aid. This individual's son, the social security number is incorrect in the FAFSA, getting an error message when trying to update it, and the FAFSA won't help them because they're too busy. So any advice, any thoughts there?
Just being persistent. I mean, I think that right now, the Department of Education is totally overwhelmed. When we get a little bit closer, we can certainly try to help you with that process to the level that we can. But if they're not helping you through it now, I'm not sure. We're not allowed yet to send any corrections because we don't even have the data yet. So that makes it a bit challenging to be able to be more proactive.
Yeah, and just know that you're not alone in that frustration of reaching out to them and them not responding. We've been hearing from a lot of high school counselors that they're also having the same thing. And but also know that this is something, right, Lisa? I mean, we get a lot of students that the social security number is incorrect. And once we have the data, then it's a lot easier for us to help solve that problem. So I think for now, it's just patience and persistence, and yeah, it's frustrating. If there's anything that we can do to help, we'll certainly try if we have that ability.
Absolutely. And actually, to commiserate a bit, financial aid administrators are also facing some of the same challenges when we reach out to the Department of Education right now. So I think that they have a lot going on, but I've yet to see a year where they haven't pulled it through. It's just sometimes how long it takes.
This individual asked, do I use the FAFSA sign-in from my older child's entries?
Yes, if you had one as a parent for your older child, you can absolutely use that as a parent for a younger child.
Okay. This individual, I created my own account without being invited by my son. Is that a problem?
Nope. In fact, that's great. You can
Great.
actually both create your accounts now, and that's fine. It's if you haven't created it and your child invites you, then that's where there's an obstacle, and I'd wait a day or two. But if you've had it in place and you've created it, you shouldn't have any issue at all. At least that's what I understand.
Okay. This says my student didn't receive an email, but the FAFSA portal said that it is in review. Should I worry? My husband didn't get a chance to sign off, but I did give them his email.
If it's a joint return, I think it should just be one parent that needs to sign off. If it's not a joint return, if you filed separately, then you each will have to be contributors. But I wouldn't worry. Mine was still in review as well. As long as you follow up with whatever parent was the contributor to actually go in and make sure you sign it once you're invited, I think you'll be fine.
Great. If the student received an email saying the FAFSA application was received, are they all good? Anything else they need to do?
Now, at the beginning, it should say this, like part where I had it crossed off, it'll have a DRN number and it will have an amount saying your SAI. As long as that's there, you should be good. If we need more information, we'll reach out to you.
Yes, I think that's also a key thing, at least for us at HWS. If once the data starts coming through, we'll be in touch. We'll for sure communicate with you fairly often about that, and making sure that, like, if we don't have it, if something's filled out wrong, you're going to hear from us. So you're not in it alone, at least on our side of things.
Right.
This individual's FAFSA application has been in pending status since the 12th. Is that normal?
I don't know if I can say it's normal or not, given that the whole process is new. I would log in and see if there's anything else that you need to do, like if there's a question that wasn't answered. One of the things that I had to do when I started mine, I think it stayed in pending until I added schools to it, because I had chosen not to answer that right away. So it's probably worth looking at it to make sure everything's filled out, but if everything's filled out and everybody's signed off, then I wouldn't be concerned.
Yeah, and actually, Lisa, that's a great point too, is not to insult anybody's intelligence, but make sure you add the schools that you actually want to send the FAFSA to, because that comes up all the time as I submitted it, but you have to add the school. So I just want to reiterate that point.
And we have 20, so it can be really, really confusing to make sure that you've gotten them all if you're adding on all of those. And any you add on after the 20 will kick somebody off. So when you go to add on the schools, there'll be a drop down, and there's a way that you can search by name or by state or both to find the schools that you want to add.
Is there a way to go back into the FAFSA platform to print out the information that was submitted?
I'm not sure if it will let you print out the data that was submitted, because I think that it's just because it's a data exchange, it just sends it to us directly. So once we have it, we can verify the information you submitted. If you would like us to, we can go over it with you. But I didn't see any way to print out the output at this time.
I don't know what this person is referring to, but they said there's a lot of conversation about tricky questions. Do you have any insight on those tricky questions on the FAFSA? I don't know if there are specific questions, maybe get in touch with us.
I think I wouldn't call them tricky questions, but ones that sometimes need clarification. The questions that I've been asked over the years is sometimes there's questions about who's defined as a parent. So that's something that the directions are pretty clear about that. If you have any concerns and you need some clarification, we can help you. But the bottom line with the 24-25 FAFSA, if parents are not together and the argument is we split it exactly for 50-50, whether it's support and time, then you are required to pick the parent with the most resources. Basically, who has the highest income now. They've just kind of made that really clear. So that's one question that comes up. And if you're remarried, the step parent information does count in the information. A few other questions would be, I think when you enter in your assets, don't include retirement accounts. That's a mistake that might come up. If it's defined as a retirement account, you shouldn't include that. You should not include the value of the residence you live in. If you have additional houses, you would have to count that. And then there's questions about businesses and farm value that you need to answer. So those are the only things I can think of that might be tricky, I guess, or maybe not as clear. But if you have any questions, please call us and we can certainly help you figure that out.
Are the only grants from the FAFSA, Pell, and TAP, and the rest are loans and work study, or are there other grants?
So from the FAFSA, the two grants that we look at are actually Pell and SEOG. SEOG is really reserved for exceptionally needy students. So that one is not quite as widespread. TAP is actually a New York State grant. So to actually apply for TAP, you need to fill out that one piece where it said start your New York State application. And then after that, what we would look at is self-help, which would be the loans and work study.
Yes.
But you can choose not to take them.
You can, and of course, you can also, if you don't qualify for Pell, TAP, SEOG, you still may qualify for HWS need-based grants on top of your merit aid. And we use the FAFSA to make that determination. So even if you're not in that, qualifying specifically for federal state grants, there's need-based aid from HWS.
That's a really good point, Stephen. I think that that's really important. That it's definitely worth filling out the FAFSA, especially because I think this year it will go a little bit smoother, I think. And if once you do that, if you don't qualify for anything else, you won't need to do it in future years. But it's absolutely worth it to see if there's any need-based funding that we can give you, because our requirements might not be quite as stringent as what the FAFSA.
So speaking of the adding schools to the FAFSA, when can students do that when they fill out, or parents when they fill out the FAFSA? At what point?
It's when you follow the prompts, it's near the end of the form is when you would add them on. And then if you need to add on more after that, you would just go into the FAFSA and add them on after. But just realize, like I said, that if you go over 20, which I'm hoping none of you will have to go over 20, but if you go over 20, then one will fall off.
This individual says that they've been setting it up and filled it out, but is only able to log in via their daughter's login. Does that mean that they are not on the FAFSA, and what should they do?
Their daughter probably needs to invite them to be a contributor.
Okay. Similar to a previous one, I don't know if it's the same situation. Another student submitted a FAFSA application in early January, and it says that the status is in review.
I think that's still okay. I have not heard anything from the Department of Education to indicate that any of those statuses are problematic. If we do hear that, we will certainly share that information.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme in the chat. I'm seeing a couple in the Q&A from that. This is a tough question as well. There's a current issue where students with parents who have no social security number cannot create accounts with the FAFSA. Is there anything anyone else can do about this?
As they improve the process. Unfortunately, I don't have any good news to share with that at all.
Yeah, that's a tough one. I think that's a stay tuned situation as well. I'm a New York State resident, but I do not see the link to New York State aid after completing the FAFSA. Is there another place to fill that out?
Slowly go, it's I think it's ask.com. I don't know if it's .com or .org, I can't remember. .org or .com. But in any, it's HESC, HESC. Let me see if I can look at it right now. It's going a little bit slow, but New York State's website is HESC.
And they do need to fill that out in addition to the FAFSA if they live in the state of New York.
Should double check that it's filled out. In any case, but if you start doing it with the FAFSA, it absolutely helps. Ask.newyork.gov is actually, I think I can you put that in the question, Stephen, or you want me to bring it up somehow? HESC.ny.gov is the site that you could start with. That's a really good question.
All right. Is early submission of the FAFSA application an advantage to receiving financial aid?
No, I don't think so. I mean, technically at some schools, they can run out of, say, work study or SEOG a little bit early. But for most schools, I think we try to be a bit more equitable in that, and it's not going to hurt you at HWS. Or one way or the other.
I think in future years, it's always advantageous to submit the FAFSA earlier, just because. But yeah, you're still going to qualify for the same aid at HWS.
What it does give you the opportunity to do, especially when you're looking at colleges, is to be able to really sort of figuratively sit around the kitchen table and figure out what aid package is considering different schools. Because you'll want to look at not only the funding that you're getting, but the cost of the school that you're attending. So the earlier you get that information, obviously the more research and time you have to have those discussions.
All right. We still got quite a few coming in. So 7:30 was our time, but Lisa, are you good to stay?
Yep.
And so we can answer these? All right. Awesome. There are a couple things in here that I can answer really quick. We will share a recording of this after. So if folks need to leave, that's totally okay. Not a problem. I won't be offended. But we will, as long as I did the recording correctly, which is no guarantee, we'll share it out. And you will know how much financial aid you get once the college receives the FAFSA data, which no colleges are. So we don't know. I don't know I can't answer that question. Our hope is mid to late February. That's at this point, I think, what we can hope for sure. Lisa, is there somewhere that they can find out what the what the SAI scores need, a breakdown of what the ranges are?
It can go as negative 1,500, and I don't think that there's a top.
Can you repeat
So,
that first part? You broke up a little bit.
so the lowest that an SAI can be is negative 1,500. But I don't think that there's a maximum.
Okay. This individual says I wasn't allowed to sign off on the form, but the form is locked as being under review. Will it be kicked back once the FAFSA reports are reviewed, or will it be released to the school?
That's a really good question. I mean, even if it's released to us and you think that there's something that's incorrect, I think you should be able to go in and make corrections after the fact. And we can help you through that process. I'm not sure why it would be locked now. I suspect it's one of the processing issues that everybody's experiencing at this time.
Yeah. I think just my advice for everybody is don't pester the schools yet, because we can't help you. But if you are, if once you know that schools have received FAFSA data and are starting to release financial aid, and if you haven't heard anything or you feel like something is off, feel free to reach out. The financial aid officers often have insight into what has been submitted, and they can see the problems a little bit easier than going directly to the FAFSA. So at this point, it's hard to help, but we will be able to. So feel free to call our colleagues in financial aid. They love it. No question about it. What date sorry, Lisa, were you gonna say something?
I was just gonna say, like, the day that you get the email, you probably want to give us a couple days at least, because we're gonna have to load it all in. So we might not be able to answer you the day you get the email. It might be worth waiting a day or two. That's all.
What date should you use for the current market value of assets and investments? Is it the date that you file the FAFSA?
That's
It is
perfect.
that date.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I'm just working through. If you got an estimated SAI index number, is it safe to say the form was completed correctly?
I think so. Unless you made some mistake with entering your family size, or you made some change there, you should be fine.
Okay. Lisa, can you repeat what you said about farm value and what the implications are of that?
So when at the end of the form, the last questions are business or farm. And if it's a farm that's a business and your residence is on it, you have to subtract the value of your primary residence, but you will have to include the value of your farm.
And what about if you
And that
have
is
your own?
also, the other part though is if you have a farm and there's debt against it, you would take the debt away from that value too. So it's the net of the value minus what is owed on it, minus the residence.
Somewhat similar. So they shouldn't include 401k and equity that hasn't matured, and
Correct.
primary home value shouldn't be added either.
Correct.
Okay.
Right. So no retirement account that's defined as a retirement account, a 401k, a 403b, a pension. None of that should be included as an asset. And your primary home should not be included as an asset.
What if it says that it cannot calculate next to their child's SAI in the email that they received?
That is a new one that I haven't heard. So I would log into the account. If you can log back into the FAFSA, I would check it out to see if there was something that wasn't completed. Otherwise, we might have to wait until they work through some more of these processing issues.
How much is the SEOG grant, and how much are need-based grants from HWS?
Both of those are variable. So SEOG operates in a way where the college is giving a set amount of money and we have to do some matching. So depending on how much we get, of course, it's allocated every year. It could be anywhere from like $500 to say $4,000 or $5,000. Not any more than that for SEOG for a year. And what was the other part, Stephen? I'm sorry.
How much are need-based grants from HWS?
Those are also variable depending on your circumstances. Like there's not a set amount that we're going to say. this is what you will automatically get or not get. We look at all of the information with the SAI and how much need you have. So one of the things that we look at, this is a little bit more in the weeds and you can stop me if it's too much, but we take a budget, which is the cost of attendance, which includes all of the things like tuition fees, room and board, books, personal expenses. And then we subtract your student aid index from that. And then we subtract your merit scholarship from that. And what's remaining is need. And that's kind of where we start. If that's at all helpful. So when I say it's variable, it really is dependent on each family situation.
This individual is a good tip. They said they had to wait on the FAFSA chat several times, but eventually they were able to get help eventually. So that's great. Is the estimated grant 100% accurate? We make more than the guideline, but we'll have 2 enrolled in college this year.
Not sure what they mean by estimated grant. Is it estimated SAI or estimated grant?
Yeah, whoever asked that question, feel free to follow up. If you have received an estimated financial aid award from HWS, we're going to honor that. So if you did that in the fall or the summer, so that's accurate. If it's the SAI, that's different. Do we accept the GI Bill? Was that a yes, Lisa?
Oh, I'm sorry, you didn't hear me. Yes, we did. And we
All
are
right.
actually a yellow ribbon school as well.
We are, okay. Yeah, so I don't know. I think we did answer this. If you received an SAI, it's safe to say it was received and everything was correct. This question from an Pennsylvania has delayed the release of their state aid application, supposed to be early February. As a Pennsylvania resident, will this potentially impact how HWS determines packages?
Something if we cross the state lines or not, but our package, we would consider that separate from what we would do for you.
Right, because you're not going to qualify for Pennsylvania and most likely Pennsylvania state aid at HWS. Any out of state for the most part, unless there's some random exceptions here or there.
Vermont is an exception, I think.
Yeah, sure. There's always little things, so I end up eating my words half the time. But as a rule of thumb, generally. What type of work study programs does HWS offer students?
I think our human resources department actually manages that a little bit more in depth. We do the award. Other folks actually work on helping you find a job, but there's jobs in various offices, and I think that there's opportunities to tutor outside if you have work study with children. So I think that there's a lot of options and opportunities there, and I don't think that the list is that big. I think they're probably 10 hours a week most of the time. So I think it's a good experience for students if they can manage it.
Absolutely. This is probably applies to a lot of folks on the chat, on the call. For families with more than one child in college, can the submitted application be applied to other children, or do we need separate applications? And do the schools know that there are multiple college-age children?
So you will need to do a separate FAFSA for each child, but you can use your same FSA ID as a parent for each child. But each child will have to do their own FAFSA and will have to invite you to be a contributor. Yes,
Go for it.
Yes, we will know that there's more than one child in college. The federal government doesn't account for that yet, but we are going to try to do that because we know that that's a big commitment.
Can you expand a little bit on what the SAI is based on?
So the SAI is a calculation that's really going to be based on parents' income and assets, students' income and assets, and the number in school, or I mean the number in, excuse me, not in school, the size of the family. So there's a formula that those numbers are run through, and it's kind of like if you ever filed your taxes by hand, You fill out all of the information and then you look at the tax table and you say, how do they think that I could afford that? Kind of works the same way. So it's just a number that we have, but what we use it for is very specific. So I'm gonna look at the SAI and I'm going to say, that means that this student is eligible for this amount of Pell, or the student is not eligible for Pell. SEOG work study. It's not necessarily a specific, like, this is what you'll have to pay. It's just an indicator of financial strength as determined by the federal government of a family.
Great. So this individual, I think, has filled out the CSS profile, would be my guess, either for HWS or for some other places. How come we can't use that to release financial aid?
Well, some of the things that the federal government does is actually does a lot of checks as well, in terms of Social Security, in terms of there's other various checks that they do through the process. I don't know that we couldn't do an estimate, but we wouldn't be able to finalize any federal aid until we had a FAFSA. And HWS has decided very specifically, from my understanding, to only use FAFSA because we don't want to necessarily put a higher burden on families at this point to do two forms.
Yeah, we're just not using the CSS for domestic students at this point. So, but again, I think if there's an estimate or something, we can be flexible. The new FAFSA doesn't take into account the primary residence worth. This individual is saving to buy a new house. So they've, it seems like they've got a lot of money in a savings account. How do we handle that? Because they feel like they're going to get punished because of it.
And I don't know the percentage off the top of my head without digging into the formula, which I haven't done yet. But it's not going to be, oh, you have to pay us all of your savings. The only thing that savings does is it impacts the value of the SAI that's created. So it's not going to necessarily make your SAI go, I don't think, from like 500 to 5 million. I think we'd have to see what the output looks like before. And then if you don't think that it's adequately reflected, then I would invite you to talk to us and we could look at your specific circumstance.
Are 529 accounts included as assets?
Who owns them?
Okay. Lisa, what is the financial planning email address?
It's finaid@hws.edu.
And phone number?
315-781-3315.
315-781.
3315.
3315. Let's see if this works. All right. And it's, of course, to find it online, for sure. So this person did include the 401k and their primary home value in their initial application. Common mistake. When should and can the FAFSA application be adjusted?
Have to work with the school after we actually get the information and
Yeah.
provide documentation to show that. Because I don't think that families can actually go in and change asset. You'll have to work with your financial aid administrator to do that. At least they never used to be able to do that, but it is the new FAFSA, so we'll see.
Follow up to the GI Bill question. Is there a contact in the office for them to reach out to?
Actually, right now, we just, you can reach out to me for now. We're working out some administrative things, but you can reach out to me. And my email is hosky@hws.edu. It's HOSKEY.
Yeah, and I can also help with that too. And my contact information is on the admissions section of the website. Does HWS have a commitment to a maximum amount of student loans a student would need to take to meet the cost of HWS?
Interesting question. We package with the federal loans, which I think is a pretty reasonable approach. If you choose to take out more loans, it's going to be either a parent loan or a private loan. And that's something you would have to initiate on, you'd have to initiate through the process with us. We wouldn't package you with that. So I don't have a set number that I'm going to say, no, we'll never package over this amount. You can assume that you'll be offered the maximum federal loans for your student. Used to take them in, and then paying the remainder is really a family decision. We offer not only, I mean, you could look at plus lunch, you could look at private loans, and you could also look at, we have a payment plan that we work through with our student accounts office that actually spread across the semester. I think it's in 3 to 5 payments, depending on when you sign up. So there are other options that we would do, but we don't have a maximum that we're going to cut anything. It's more practices that I think are pretty reasonable.
Um, is there an SAI number where you're over the threshold for financial aid?
I think you're not going to be, that's a really general question. I wouldn't say that there's an SAI number where you shouldn't submit your FAFSA. Because even if you're over the threshold for, say, Pell, you still may qualify, as Stephen was mentioning earlier, for need-based aid through the schools. And you don't want to walk away from that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that is definitely true here at HWS. Another great question. I think this one is, I can take this one. If the financial packages are delayed by the college, will the deadline for deposits, including housing, be extended? So unless your early decision, in which case if you haven't received your financial aid or an estimate, we'll happily grant you a deadline extension. The deadline for all students is May 1st. I anticipate that you will have enough information from the colleges to make the decision that you need to make, and we will not need to extend that May 1st deadline. And it won't affect your housing or anything of that nature. If you're accepted to HWS and you enroll, you're going to get housing. What we will commit to, I think, is if we are sitting here and having this same conversation at the end of March or early April, then I would support January. Stephen is saying this, we'll probably support extending that deadline. Because I want to make sure that everybody has the time that they need, but I don't anticipate us needing to do that. I'm maybe overly optimistic, but I think there's a lot of, Lisa can answer that too. I mean, I think the nice thing is there's a lot of heat on the government right now. And that's a good thing. I think they're feeling it a little bit based on some of the things that we're seeing come out.
I actually think that there was some group in Congress that already asked for a hearing about it. So I anticipate, I'm hoping that we'll get it sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Does the SAI determine what you are eligible for through the government, i.e. direct subsidized or direct unsubsidized loans?
It depends on, it goes back to that calculation we were talking about earlier, where you would use the cost of attendance budget and subtract the other resources that may be available to you. And that would determine whether or not you get a subsidized or unsubsidized loan. Okay. So in some schools, depending on cost, you may qualify for a subsidized loan, and some you may not.
Great. And then the last question I have was, if you completed the CSS profile and share it with HWS, would that expedite the financial process at all? I think at this point, the answer to that question is no. But if you're feeling like you really need some information, feel free to reach out and we can see. But we need the FAFSA. That's how we package financial aid here at HWS. Wow, that was a lot of questions. I learned a lot, and Lisa and I have not worked together for a very long time, but holy moly, we're lucky to have Lisa at HWS. That was awesome. You're a pro. So we'll send out some more communications. Thank you all for being a part of this. Again, feel free to reach out personally. I'm sure we'll talk again. We want to be here for you, your students, and your families. So thank you, everybody.